Hello, my friends. Wes Gow here again with Cardinal Coaching Solutions Podcast. Thanks so much for stopping in and checking out wherever you're listening. Hope that you're doing well. Once again, quick shout out to the 2021 Self-Care Summit. It's been going on all this year, hosted by the brilliant coach Liz Garrett. It's a treasure trove of all things related to self-care. So I got a couple months left here to check that out. And like I said, I think on the previous podcast, now heading into the holiday season might be a better time than ever to take some time for yourself and invest in yourself in that way. So do check that out. I'll include a link to that in the show notes. Okay, today's episode, today's share is going to be something really top of mind for me that just recently happened, and I'm, at least for now, calling it maybe you should quit. We have an interesting relationship with quitting here in the West. It's often frowned upon in almost any context. Not all, but in most, it seems like. And I had a recent experience with this, and so I wanted to share this with you. So let's start with, if you've been a listener, then you know that creativity is a big part of who I am. It's a big part of my outlet. It's just a part of what I do. It's a part of my being. It's very much involved in the way that I coach. I tend to use a lot of metaphors and stories that connect with clients. And so even on the bookshelf behind me here, you can see a lot of elements of creativity. And music is one of those, music and writing. So music's a big part of my life. I have a musical project here locally. I write and record music. I've released a couple different standalone projects. And I write as well. If you're interested in any more of that, you can check out my own personal website, wesgow, WESGOW.com. And over the last couple years, I've compiled another batch of songs that I love. I'm really, really proud of. And like I said, I perform here locally, but I really felt like I want to record another project with these songs. Like I said, I'm really proud of them. And in many ways, they're very different from previous recordings, from previous songs that I've written. So I was really excited about them and feeling like I want them to exist. Really for that reason only. I want them to exist. I want to capture them and record them. And so over the summer, I just happened to have a conversation. I don't even know how it came about, but I got on the phone with a local engineer and producer and musician himself who recorded my previous album. And in the years that have followed, this was like 7 or 8 years ago, he is, much like myself. We're adults. We both work. Our wives work. We have families. And so he sold his studio, and he's working a full-time job. He plays in a local band. Anyway, my understanding was he had kind of gotten out of the recording business. And so lo and behold, here we are on a phone call, and I told him that, man, I'm really kind of looking for what to do. I'd like to record it. And he says, well, I'll do it. Let's do it. And I'm like, whoa, wait, what? I thought you weren't doing this anymore. Well, it turns out, no, he doesn't have a studio space anymore, but he does still have all of his gear. He recently recorded a band, in fact, his own band. And so he did that kind of remote in terms of outside of a studio. And that happens all the time. Bands rent houses and venues and things like that and set up shop and record. And so, whoa, I was really excited, really intrigued by that. And okay, so we kind of set a tentative date for the fall to get this going, to get this started. He had one other project that he had to wrap up. And so almost immediately, it may have been like right after that phone call or the next day, I started taking steps towards making this happen. I wanted to reach out to some other musicians who I wanted to be on the project, kind of fill out the band a little bit. I wanted them to rehearse the songs that I had so that we could be more efficient when we go in to record. And so I started reaching out, and almost immediately I started hitting resistance. I started coming up against resistance. Really practical stuff. Okay. Well, this musician is only available on these nights, and this one's only available on these nights, but not after this time, and yada yada yada. And and instantly I felt like this isn't fun anymore. I've taken like one step towards bringing this to fruition, and I'm already not having fun. Now, okay, things like that kept happening. I kept bumping up against resistance, and I kept going. So I was able to schedule a few rehearsals. And even on those nights, now again, this is after a day's work, after dinner, after kids' homework, after bedtime routine. Okay, it's time to load up all my gear from my practice area in the house here, get in the truck, drive to rehearsal, unload it, set it all up, do, a quick little sound check. Okay, let's rehearse these songs, and then tear it all back down, come home. Yeah, I started finding myself on nights going to these rehearsals thinking, I have no desire to do this. I don't want to do this. But I kept going. Now, you may notice, I don't think you can actually see the title, but on the top of my bookshelf, right towards the middle, there's a book called The War of Art. Brilliant, brilliant book. Love it. Can't recommend it enough, especially for creatives. And the author, Stephen Pressfield, identifies this concept or awareness of resistance and how it's always there, it's always present, pushing back against whatever you want to bring forth. In fact, let's just think about it. We know this. If you've ever brought anything to life, it is work. Whether it's a business, a new relationship, a piece of art or creativity, it's work. Even bringing forth a human life, for goodness sake. The word that we ascribe to that process is what? It's labor. We call that process labor. To bring forth is work. So I had all this going on in my mind and going, nope, this is just part of the process, man. It hurts. It's, there's aspects of it that aren't fun. You know that. You've been here. You've done that. And so I just kept going. I just kept doing it, knowing there's this part of me that's like, I don't want to do this. Okay. So let's fast forward to just last week. I had a conversation with the engineer where this was the phone call of, okay. In fact, we had traded texts. We had exchanged texts in which I said, hey, it's fall. I've been, putting in some effort. I'm ready to get going if you're still up for it. And he said, yeah, let me know a night of the week that works for you, and we'll get started. We'll come over and lay down. You'll come over and we'll lay down all the scratch tracks. And once again, my immediate energy was, I don't want to do that. I just don't want to do that. And yet I kept going until we had one last phone call to schedule this. And I said, at the very end of that phone call, I finally said, hey man, just to let you know, I've kind of been really on the fence about this whole thing. Immediately there was this opening, and he said, oh my goodness, I'm so grateful you said that, because I have to. I'm so swamped with life. I'm so busy. I didn't want to let you down, and yet I feel the exact same way. Okay. We let a few more days pass. We checked in again. In fact, we gave ourselves a little bit of time to kind of intentionally check, check with ourselves, check with our wives. Anyway, it's on hold. It's shelved. It fell through. I don't know if it'll ever happen with that engineer. And so in reflection, I learned a couple of things. One, I'm talking to myself here. I have to check in with and honor the energy that I have. I have to check in with the energy that I have towards it. Knowing that there's work ahead, and yet am I energized by that work? In fact, 2 days after the conversation I just told you about, we had another conversation which we officially said, you know what, man, it's not going to happen. Okay. The next night, 24 hours after that conversation, I'm sitting on my couch right over here. It's off screen. I'm pointing to it. Obviously, you can't see it. But I'm sitting on that couch, my computer open, a new Word document started, chapter 1 of the next novel that I'm going to work on. And I've got loads of work ahead of me, maybe a year's worth of writing ahead of me, let alone all of the little minutia production elements, just tons of work ahead of me. And I was bristling with excitement sitting on the couch. Chapter 1, blank page. I don't know where we're going. I've got so much work ahead of me, and yet my energy is so excited about that work, and it's the exact opposite situation of what I had facing the music project. Tons of work ahead of me. Not excited about it. So I have to check in with the energy about the energy, the vibration, the messaging, whatever it is you want to call it. Now, second thing I learned, and I've talked about this before, but the message you're sending to the universe is extremely powerful. I was sending, let's say, mixed messages to the universe about this recording project. Yeah, in fact, I was clear to the universe, whatever you want to call it. The message I was emanating was clearly, I'm not sure I want to do this. That's what was vibrating in my soul, and yet I kept going through the motions. And lo and behold, it didn't happen. Okay. Number 3 is when it comes to resistance, and this is the final thing, especially when it comes to this idea of maybe you should quit. I was just recently listening to a podcast with, I believe the author's name is Ryan Holiday. He's written several books with like short little pithy titles. Stillness is the Key, Ego is the Enemy. I think another one. The one I'm reading right now is The Obstacle is the Way. And I was listening to this interview, and he said, you know, when it comes to whether or not you should quit something, check in with what's the easier thing to do here. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. In my case, it was just easier to just keep going. It was very difficult for me to be honest and say, I'm going to be the one to pick up the phone and call the engineer and say, I don't want to do this, man. I just don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it. That was extremely hard for me. So whatever it is when it comes to let's take a job, for example. Maybe the easier thing to do is just keep going in. Just wake up and keep going. The hard thing might be to quit, to leave. Now, let's also take something that in that job scenario, of course, you heard all the energy, or you saw, if you're watching, all the energy in my posture and my voice that said, you know, the job sucks. Let's take something that's great. Let's take something that really you have no reason to not do. And this is all over. You know, I've talked about the Frozen franchise before. Here's Elsa, who's the queen, and what you want to quit that? You live in a castle, for God's sake. You have absolutely no reason to want to quit this role. The harder thing to do, the more challenging thing to do, the more courageous thing to do would be to be honest with yourself and eventually others and say, I don't want to do this. I'm done. I don't want to do it. So those are some things when it comes to, hey, maybe you should quit. What's the easier thing? What's the harder thing? Those are things that I've recently learned, and it's been really, really helpful for me to reflect back on that whole process. And so, yes, I'm starting out on my next work of fiction, and I couldn't be more excited. I've got tons of work ahead of me. And I can't wait to share it with you. Uh, uh, don't expect anything anytime soon. But if that's a conversation you'd like to have, maybe there's something going on for you and you just can't get right side up on what you should do. You know there's mixed messages in your soul, and yet you keep taking your body through the motions. If that's something you want to talk about, then you know what to do. Shoot me an email, Wes, W-E-S, at cardinalcoachingsolutions.com, and we will unpack that. That's what I love to do. All right, thanks for stopping by, and we'll do this again soon.